I'm Madison Gray, and this is the Wholehearted podcast. Today on the podcast, I am joined by my husband, Kyle. We are going to talk all things minimalism and marriage and slow living, bring you guys back into where it all began for us. Kyle's going to share his insight as to what it's been like for him to have me go from Starbucks pageant queen to slow living. And you guys have a lot of questions. So I decided I'm going to it was actually Kyle that helped me decide that we should give this podcast some structure because there was such a wide variety of questions about co-sleeping and family life and minimalism and slow living. So we're just going to start with the story of how it began, bring us back to maybe 2015, what we were like before. Did I force you to become minimalist? These questions. Maybe we could talk about minimalism and finances a little bit, co-sleeping, home birth, all these things. Okay, backstory. I have known Kyle for half my life at this point.
Yeah.
So our story together really begins in childhood. Kyle, thank you for being on my podcast, by the way. I think I forgot to say that. And you really are my favorite guest.
I'm excited, and I want to say how also proud I am of you and just how you share, just things that you've learned over the past 7 years or so since. And it's just really nice to see all the women resonating with it, and, I think it's something that's really needed.
Thanks, babe. Okay, so where would you say this story begins for us?
Minimalism is definitely the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, I would say that's where it starts too. So I always say that when people ask me, where did you get started with slow living and minimalism? And I say, the birth, Mallory being born. It's kind of like a reawakening, and I started just getting rid of stuff, feeling completely differently about myself.
Yeah, and I think it's important to denote what is slow living and minimalism, because it's not a set of rules. It's not just another box to fit into. I think for me, what it is living on purpose instead of the way you should be and just drifting and just the way that culture says you should, or you flip on any major TV network, what do the commercials look like, and that's kind of how you're supposed to live. So it's just living on purpose, and I think it so happens to be slow because it's kind of counter of what the world says. Yeah. Because I think if you really, really thought about it, it's people don't have the time or the space to even think is this even really what I want? They're just kind of numbed out to what they're feeling.
I agree, and I think that was you and me probably coming out of, high school and college. Just both our parents, I don't know if they listen to this podcast, but we have so much respect for our parents. For whatever reason, we came out of into young adulthood just kind of wanting to live for their approval, when I don't even think they would have said that's what they wanted for us. But it was so strong and took so long for us to kind of even be who are we? We grew up together as kids. We met in high school and got married pretty young, I think. But anyways, not to bore you with that whole story. The point is I think minimalism was that first actionable thing that we did that was this is what I like. This is how I want my life to look like.
Yeah, it's very practical. It's very, very practical. And you can, you mention all the time, you can practice hundreds of times a day about is this really what I like? When you're going through your home, you get to flex that muscle multiple times, and it kind of makes that muscle stronger and stronger about, hey, is this really, serving our family? Is this serving me? Is this helping me grow? Those are the types of questions you're asking yourself. Then it just starts to, flow into your lifestyle habits and how you live your life. And, you know, I think that's how the progression happens. It usually starts with minimalism because it's just so practical. And then, you know, it just starts to flow into other parts of your life.
So a lot of people ask me, like, what were your first impressions of me going minimalist, like getting rid of stuff? Because everyone asked, was it you first? Was it me first? Did we become this way together? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think minimalism is so much like a home thing.
Yeah.
And at the time, like, you were the only one that was really in the home for most of the day. So I feel like our stuff probably affected you the most. And just as a woman, I think that's probably more innate in you, that your environment would affect. So you definitely started it. And I think for me, if I'm honest, like, what got me on board at the beginning was, I think, the financial component of it. Because we weren't making a ton of money at the time, and just me thinking about buying less stuff, I was like, let's do that. Yeah, that sounds good. You know, but then, like, once we got into that, like, started buying less stuff or getting rid of things, or, you know, we were selling things for a while because some of the stuff we did have some value. And I think early on, I was much more concerned about trying to sell everything instead of just donating. Yeah, I wasn't really, like, worried about my time as much. I would, like, spend, like, hours to make, like, $15 on eBay. Yeah. And then when you think about it, like,
that's
okay.
true. I forgot about that.
Like, so I definitely got into it for the financial aspect of it. But I think as we started to have less and less, like, it just was so much nicer to, like, not have to manage it all. Or you think you start to realize how much, like, more time you would have not managing it on a weekend, not cleaning out your garage, or even just, like, the freedom to be able to do some of the things that we've done, like move to that 400 square foot beach house that, like, most people would never even consider because they have a couch, or, like, you know, what would I do with my dresser?
So much freedom we were, like, really into the super minimal. Not that we're not anymore, but yeah, we were just experiencing that honeymoon phase, I think, with not having all that stuff we used to have of, like, we could do anything. Let's go to the beach. And I mean, we still picture ourselves living by the beach. We just love the ocean. But that part was so freeing. I can step back into that time of our life and be like, oh my gosh, this is so great.
Yeah. So I think, it started with money, and then it just, the more I got into it, the more it was just like, yeah, this is actually, like, much better to, like, have higher quality things, but just less of them, and, like, to buy nicer things that last longer, and ultimately be spending less money at the whole you know, the whole time.
Yeah. One time you told me that, like, you feel like there's a whole bunch of different funnels or something like that into minimalism, or into just, like, more conscious living, where you're not just, like you said, drifting anymore.
Like, I think there's a lot of benefits of it. Like, you have the financial aspect of it. You have just, like, your stress reactors of just, like, having clutter around. There's probably, like, an environmental aspect to it of, you know, less purchases would mean less plastics and whatnot. There's a lot of different ways to get into it. And I think, like, it wouldn't have worked. I don't know, like, for us to get into it for the exact same reason, I think is not something that I would, like, expect to see in a lot of couples because of how different most couples are.
Yeah.
Sort of, like, expect that, I don't know, your husband would just be on board for, like,
having a cleaner house or something.
Yeah. But I think also, like, you focused on you first.
Yeah, I want to talk about, you made a good point. You were, like, saying how most couples are really different. And I think it's something I want to talk about because I notice it a lot in comments or just messages, is, like, Well, it's actually something you hear as a woman all the time. A woman will describe her best friend as, we are literally the same person. And that's like the greatest compliment you could get. You're like, I found this person that's my same exact replica. And I think what's funny about that is like that I mentioned in a video the other day, like this Tony Robbins quote that he said, what makes a relationship work is things that are in common, but what makes relationships passionate is things that are different. And so I think like we definitely share values. And so we can talk on like a zoomed out level about basically anything and be like vibing with each other. But then when it comes down to it, we are so different. And I think like for a wife or a husband, I don't know, you'd have to speak to this. I don't think men actually do that as much. But like to try to turn your husband into the same person you are is not a good plan if you want to keep up a passionate marriage. And so like, I'm not saying that I have just been a perfect wife all this time and I don't know. I'm just saying like this idea that we need to like turn people into ourselves. Like we need to make our husbands get on board with minimalism for the same reasons we are. Do you feel like there's a way to communicate with a husband, with a man, that would make sense to him or that would be respectful to quote unquote get him on board or no?
What I want to do for you is like provide and protect for you, our family, like provide a safe space where we feel comfortable, and like for you to come to me and be like, babe, I can't do all this stuff. Like I'm feeling this stressed out. I'm feeling like this. I'm feeling like that. I'm overwhelmed. Like I'm going to want to like fix that and help you, help our family. And that's kind of like you're starting with like, why are we doing this? We're trying to like make a better life for ourselves. Like, you know, grow, develop, instead of like, I don't know, like getting rid of my stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I think
I've done that. Full disclosure.
You get on the same page with like your goals and dreams and aspirations. Like,
yes.
Kind of like the details of the how-tos, like kind of
they'll fizzle out.
They'll figure itself out.
Yeah.
The example of like, if, you know, Dave Ramsey talks to people about getting out of debt, and usually it's one spouse that gets super pumped about it. What he advises is that you wouldn't just go to the other spouse and say like, hey, we're going to sell your car, like, because we got to get out of debt.
Yeah.
Like you would start with like, okay, where are we going? Like, what's our goal? Like, what are we going to do? Like, do we want to buy a house? Where do we want to live? Like, what type of life do we want to have? Okay, let's agree on that. Okay, so how are we going to get there? And then you start to like see in the details, like, hey, like maybe this second car, third car, whatever it is, like doesn't fit. And then it's like together. You can start to like make progress if you're on the same page about your goals and where you want to go as a couple. And I think when those goals that you have as a couple like outweigh your own like individual goals that you might have had from you know, before you got married or whatever, then like I think you're on the right track.
I was kind of reflecting on this like before we started, and I just think any time there's something that comes up, because I am the more sensitive spouse of the two of us. Like I'm the one that like can feel when like, oh, something's not right, or like, I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it, but I'm the one typically that's like more in the pulse of like, hey, I'm getting this sense about something. I don't know. I know you know what I'm talking about, but I don't know if other people will know.
Empathic.
Right. But the point is like often when there's something like when I was postpartum with Mallory and I was really struggling with postpartum anxiety, and you knew that, like you could see the struggle. And like, I don't even remember specifically, but I know that this is just something that has happened again in our marriage, whether it be about like educating our children or trying out anything counterculturally that is different than what we've always done. It's like, I feel like I will come to you very vulnerably and be like, I am really struggling. or just like really open up to like what is truly behind the thing that I'm upset about that's going on, and say like, this is what I like, this is what I need, this is what I want. And like it's not a manipulative move. It's just like an opening up to my spouse. And I feel like if like, if your spouse really cares about you, like, I don't know, I just have always felt safe to do that, because like, I know you're going to be like, I hear you, I see you. What can we do? Like, let's figure something out together. You're not just going to, I don't know what spouse would just be like, well, I don't care. It's like you were saying though, it's very different if you just start getting rid of somebody's stuff and not communicating clearly.
Yeah, I think that's part of it though, is it requires like a greater conversation about like, where are we headed as a couple and as a family? You know, what do we want?
Yeah.
Because then like,
an important thing to do.
Okay, how do we get there? You know, it's just like, then some of those details start to work themselves out when you're both collectively on board for that same vision and direction as to where you're going.
Right. What's funny too is like, now I would call you much more of a minimalist than me.
That's typically how it has worked.
It's like I start something, but then you take it to this intensity level that's like, I will never take it.
Be careful what you bring to me.
Oh my gosh. But I admit
like,
that, admittedly, that is very attractive.
She was the one who initially brought up Dave Ramsey to me.
Yeah, that's right. You had a Southwest credit card at that time. Did you? And I was like, I feel gross about these credit cards. And then we took a Dave Ramsey class together. I think we got it as a gift, so it was free, which probably helped you get on board for it. But either way,
I'm saying like,
I was like, let's just go this class for fun. It's like a free date night, and it'd probably be good for us. I don't know. And then you took it to this whole other level. I can't.
Yeah.
You are like Dave Ramsey's son now, which I actually love. I'm pleasantly surprised.
I'm trying to remember what his actual son's name is. Daniel.
Shout out to Daniel. Okay, so we have a lot of questions though, so I want to talk about slow living. Do you feel like we covered minimalism?
Yeah.
Kept it minimal. Very good.
We've tried to record this podcast a couple different times, and
we're doing really well right now.
It was like an hour and a half, and we're just like talking about our wedding still.
Oh, yeah. God bless. It's good for you guys. You don't have to hear that. Okay, so let's talk about slow living. People want to know, is there a difference between minimalism and slow living for you? What do you think about slow living? Have you noticed a difference? What was the biggest difference you noticed in me with slow living? Or is this just kind of like a wish-washy term to you?
No, I think going back, it's the same thing as minimalism. It's like slow living is just an intentional decision about like how you want to spend your time. Mm-hmm. So happens to be slower because of the world's pace is just frantic, you know, but like, it's like you said in like a lot of your videos, it's not just like prancing around on a prairie. It's not, I don't know, just like meditating just for 8 hours straight. Like there's a lot of like those misconceptions I think about it, but like truthfully what it is just like intentionally choosing how to spend your time. Instead of like allowing basically, I think, culture to decide it for you without you even knowing about it.
I like that. I've never actually thought of like minimalism is probably intentionally, when you really dwindle it down, it's like intentionally choosing how to spend your money. And then slow living is like intentionally choosing how to spend your time.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, like it can look different for everyone. So like I noticed a lot of the questions are like, I don't know, it's just, it doesn't have to look any type of way. Like you can still do
it's very hard for
anything you want to do.
Like,
You're not doing it because you think you should, it's because you legitimately want to.
Yeah.
And it's part of your goals to continue to get better.
And I think minimalism helps you get more in touch with what do I want.
Yeah, I mean, it builds that confidence. I feel like the biggest difference I think I noticed with you is just like confidence in like who you are.
Yeah.
You know, like confidence to be different, like comfortable to be different when whatever happens. Like, cause it is different, and it's not always, it's not easy to be different.
Yeah. Yeah,
but
definitely.
I think that confidence that gets built up over time, I think starting with minimalism when you're making those decisions every single day, or like as you're getting rid of things, and then it just starts to go into more of your lifestyle habits and how you spend your time.
So people want to know, how do we balance our marriage, kids, work, and home with a slow living approach? How do you think we manage that?
I think you'll be surprised like how much time you actually might have if you stop doing things you don't really want to do, or like that you're just doing for the approval of others, or you know, just look at the things you're doing and write them all down, and like, why am I doing, like, and like, can you like explain to yourself why you're doing it?
Right. And I think we, like you said, confidence, like we both feel comfortable now with doing nothing. And like, you know, we have a pretty different schedule from, we live in a very average suburban neighborhood. So I see people leaving for work, and it often hits me what a different life we have at home with our kids. You know, homeschooling, you work from home, I work from home. And I think the longer you do things that are a little bit different, the more you have to be the one to give yourself the permission slip on things. We think we need to do things that we don't even need to do. And I'm probably getting lost on a rant, but it can be scary, I think, for a lot of people to slow down, especially with children.
Well, yeah, it's the fear of like missing out, or like fear of having them be behind.
Right.
In
especially
whatever
we want what's best with
like.
for our children. And I think this is something I've heard that dads struggle with, is like not starting their children early in sports, like so that they can quote unquote get ahead of like the other athletes out there, like have a shot at the major leagues. And that, I think, can really steal away a slow family life and childhood as well.
There's levels to it, and I think it's just harder nowadays. Like when we were growing up, like I played baseball, like travel baseball was a thing back then, but it wasn't, I didn't feel like it was like that big yet.
Yeah.
And it was still, but now it feels like every single sport is year-round traveling.
Yeah, I
every
think
weekend,
they won't even like look at you for college in some cases if you haven't played for such and such team or traveled or done year-round, you know?
Right. It's like, it's kind of forcing kids not to play all the sports, and just be athletic or
have fun.
I don't know, but like also like you can let them just be kids for a bit and then like see where their interests take them. But I mean, we also just try and focus on like more things that are family oriented instead of,
we can all do.
Yeah, like when we go to the skate park, like I'm out there with them surfing, or it's just like things that we could do more together.
Yeah.
Than like I'm at the baseball this night and you're dancing, and then we never see each other for what?
Right.
And that's kind of what we've talked about, is just like that's not how we want our family life to be. So like we're not gonna let it get to that.
And plus, we both grew up playing sports in like a micro professional way. It's so strange now how like children have to kind of like become little adults for their sport, and like straight from school to 4 hours of practice to like, I was talking the other day with you about how I was busier as a kid than I am now. Like my high school and your high school like schedule. I like look at high schoolers now. I'm like, I don't know how you don't have anxiety, like how you're not ill, because
And we didn't even have social media.
Right.
To like throw gas on the fire.
Right. It's insane. Like you get up at 7, leave your house until 2:30, and then go to your sports practice or theater or whatever until like 7:30, and then eat a quick dinner and repeat. And then you have like games and sports on the weekend. And it's just like this schedule that I think for me, I can't speak for everyone, but for me, would not serve me and my body and my potential, my confidence, any of that. Like
it kind of forces you to take your 20s and 30s to like unlearn a lot of that.
Yeah. We just don't want that for our children. We'd rather protect their childhood.
Yeah.
And then if they really are going to become athletes, if that really is the destiny for their lives, I don't think you or I can stop it. Like, I just think that path will unfold.
Yeah.
I just think a lot of parents are fearful of their kids missing out, like you said. And so that's why they have them in activities and they're afraid to pull them out.
But like, yeah, I guess just for us though, like the most important thing for us in raising kids is to like create thriving adults that are emotionally healthy.
Yeah.
That have good like relationships, decipher, quality people that would add to their lives versus like people who are not going to add to their, like, that's the goal. Fitting in or like keeping up doesn't really fit into that.
No, it doesn't. It does not make for a happy life. Somebody asked, what are your favorite slow living activities to do as a family?
I mean, we love going to nature.
Yeah.
And for me, the beach is my favorite. I mean, the kids get lost in play. Like,
they come back so regulated too. I feel like we all do.
So like we try and do as much nature as we can. We'll go for hikes and like hikes by like maybe a mile. But like we found some really good areas where you can like not have to like hike 12 miles to still get like out there and like
the kids think that they're backpacking, but
I mean like, and I like to be outside with the kids just too, even out of the house, just like riding scooters or riding bikes. Like,
yeah, you spend a lot of time,
I think,
outside with them.
But like anywhere where the kids can get lost in play, but also when the kids get lost in play at these nature locations, it allows us to talk to
that's kind
about
of
things that are potentially adult content for them,
because
they're just lost in play, so they don't we just get to talk and like how are things
very
going,
different than when we're in the house.
What's our plans, like because if we try and talk in the house, like they're just kind of looking at you, or it's just different. Like
it is,
and
it's very different.
I understand why they would want to just sit there and listen too. Which is like some of the things they just don't need to hear. So
we're very careful about that as far as like the Simplicity Parenting Ethos, that book, like we really do live that way. We're really careful to just protect the kids' childhood from adult content. We try to keep that at a minimum, whether that's things that are really inappropriate for children, or just like too much talk about our work, or things that are just literally just adult content that's like they don't really need to be thinking about that. But it's not that we don't get to talk about it, because we do. We just have to be intentional about the places that we do talk about it, and I think that's healthy for us.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I don't know, for kids, it feels like they just need to know, like, once we've kind of gone through the options and decided what we're going to do versus, like, watching us work through that. I don't know, like, they don't need to get that yet.
Definitely.
So.
No. Yeah, I love that. Often we talk at night, too, but since I've been going to bed earlier, especially being pregnant, we don't always stay up late, which I'm grateful for, but it's like even just a little bit of time out in nature and we can cover a lot of ground. Somebody asked, does Kyle take a back seat when it comes to decisions about Mallory and Tennessee? Is he happy to let you lead parenting? Do you feel like I lead parenting?
I would say like you're definitely the most passionate about it, in the sense of like you're constantly listening to like a podcast about it, or like, but I think like we're on the same page in that sense. And I think you'll bring like new ideas to me. I'm like, oh, I like that. Or like, I don't know how that would work for us. Or I'm passionate about just spending time with them, as much time as I can with them. And trying to work on myself to be as regulated as possible, so that like I'm not triggered.
Role modeling is like really important to you. And I agree that I think that's like the most powerful way to teach our children anything. It's not just sit down and tell them what to do. It's to show them good manners, not tell them, oh, that's bad manners, or show them what a healthy relationship looks like, not just say like, oh, you should share. You know, we both definitely agree on that. We just don't, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't say we disagree about parenting, because you're so on board with respectful parenting. It's just like we have, yeah, you don't have interest in like reading the books or listening to the podcast. And I don't know, that doesn't bother me. Like,
yeah, I think it's okay.
We have different interests. Yeah, it seems to be fine. One person I was looking for, okay, someone said how to break free of behavior style parenting when you were raised that way. Struggle bus.
Like, what's the goal of parenting? And it's not, for me, to raise kids who are worried about what other people think, trying to do things for other people's approval, which is just a byproduct of behaviorism. We were raised in it. I think the school system in general foundation is behaviorism. I think it's interesting though, because getting into this a little bit, like this school system, I think I thrived in it, in the sense of like, I was
gonna bring this up.
I was straight A student,
right?
Almost valedictorian. You know, like it was something that I thrived in, and like it became an identity for me.
Yeah.
That was like really hard to unlearn, about performing and achieving and like getting my worth from what I do, how I can perform. And for you, like you were on the complete opposite side of the spectrum. School just like didn't quite, like your mind just didn't work in the way that they were teaching.
Thank you.
You know, like, and you're an incredibly smart person and like incredibly intuitive.
No, I wouldn't have graduated high school if, I don't even think I should say his name, but he literally forged a grade for me so that I would graduate. Wonderful math teacher.
Bringing this back to behaviorism, like I was applauded and you were not. You were like the opposite.
I felt so shamed.
You were ashamed. We ended up in the same place though, like once school ends.
Right.
Struggling with identity of like extrinsically.
Very low self-worth.
Extrinsically motivated kids.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that we both found each other too. It will always amaze me that whatever our wounds were, and maybe I won't take it so negative, like maybe there was something that just was attractive about that opposite, because we've always been really extreme opposites. We could give so many more examples like that, where it's like I was this end of the spectrum and you were this end of the spectrum. I don't know what that is, but
you ever heard of a magnet?
Stop. Yes, I've heard of a magnet.
There's a positive and a negative.
All right, fine. A little bit more about like unconventional family life. There are a ton of questions here about our sleep situation. How do you feel about co-sleeping as a man, as a husband?
It's one of my favorite things.
I know that to be so genuine. Oh my gosh. Every night I feel like you get in bed, you're like, I love sleeping with our kids.
There's something about like when the child is asleep that just like, it's like, it breaks down all the walls of like anything that was hard that day, or like
it is something very healing and like peaceful. I feel like we sleep so well. No, I mean, by the way, our kids are young, so
yeah,
that's what's comfortable for them too, and that might change in the future, but it's not like I need them to sleep. It's just, it feels so primal, like it's instinctual to have our children under our protection in the dark. Like I feel like I sleep so well.
Co-sleeping started when you had Mal and like you were breastfeeding through the night.
Right.
And like for me, like for her to be in a different room or even in a crib, like you're now up all night.
Right.
Like if you are having to get up to breastfeed her and go sit in a chair or something, now you're up all night instead of co-sleeping, when we had that little DACA thing, like,
which I know people have a lot of feelings about, but that's just what worked for us.
like you were able to sleep. I don't know, like,
Yeah,
it's much more
slept
restful.
great, especially once we had Tennessee and I was more comfortable with it. I was so scared to co-sleep with Mallory at first, and by the time we had Tennessee, I had so much more confidence.
Yeah.
But dude, I slept great. I think I had got some of the best sleep of my life when he was a newborn. So
It's definitely a quality of life thing for you.
yeah, big time. But yeah, people are under this misconception that like it really harms their marriage to co-sleep with their child. And I think like we agree that like sex is a really important part of a relationship and of life. But I think that's what they're meaning is like, so do you just never touch each other? Like you never.
But yeah, I think it also probably assumes like, I think especially for the woman, sex starts long before it actually starts.
Definitely.
So like that has to be a priority too, of like
right.
making sure that you feel taken care of and like loved throughout
Guess
the
what
entire
helps me feel
day.
taken care of? Sleeping well. I don't know. There's just a lot of nuance to it, and I don't want to.
But I feel like there's also just so much of this that's so interconnected.
Yeah.
With like when you choose to live intentionally and like choose what to do with your own time, like you have more time to do the things that you
right.
like care about, and that might be talking to you or
right.
Versus like we're running around like never see each other, and then like all of a sudden like only time we're seeing each other is when we're gonna go to sleep, and now Tennessee's in the middle of it.
I can understand that, yeah. And I think some people do, like you used to get home at like 6:30 or 7, which is when the kids go to bed.
Right.
And if I'm newly postpartum, it's probably when I go to bed too. So I don't know. I think there's seasonality to it, but that's just works for us. Next question.
Okay.
Let's move on to pregnancy because I am pregnant, and you were saying to me the other day that you were so scared for me to be pregnant for the first time, like before we had Mallory.
Yeah.
And now you were telling me the other night that your favorite me is pregnant me.
No, I wasn't scared for you to be pregnant.
Okay.
I was just scared to have a kid.
Okay. Well, pregnancy,
Like,
that is a terminal kid coming.
It wasn't like you pregnant was scary.
I see. Thank you for clarifying.
But obviously, like the first kid, like you have no idea what you're about to get into.
Yeah.
So I think that's where that fear was coming from. And we were also like 23. So like,
What would you go back and tell yourself when you were scared to have a kid?
yeah, it's all works out and it's better than you thought.
It all works out. That's what I feel. Did you ever picture yourself setting up a home birth pool in our living room for me?
No.
But you did with your leaf blower, which by the way is not. Don't do that. It works though.
It works. We had like the air mattress thing and it wasn't working.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Tell me about home birth. What was it like from your perspective? People want to know.
Again, like one of the greatest things ever.
Were you immediately on board?
No, I mean, like, I think just because of how culture like has portrayed birth in every movie and every
yeah,
they make it feel like the women can't handle it.
right.
So yeah, I mean, there's a little bit, but like I also saw the other side of the coin with Mallory, our first birth, and just like what the hospital system is like, and like all the fear and the shame that they use.
Yeah, neither of us knew. We had great intentions with that, and it went sideways.
Yeah, so once I saw the other side, it was much easier for me to be like all in.
Yeah, you were from the beginning.
As the guy.
With Tennessee.
And just seeing like how it impacted you and like, yeah. And then, but I mean, honestly, like the hospital is the worst. And like, I can't explain how amazing it was to like have Tennessee, and then
amazing.
like 2 hours later we're just sleeping as a family in our own bed.
God bless America.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
It was. I'm really excited for this birth. We actually, at the end of my pregnancy with Mallory, this is a long story, but we considered it like right at the last minute because of how we were being treated at the end of my pregnancy. And for a whole bunch of reasons, we decided against it. But whatever your fears were then, what do you feel like changed?
I think the illusion that the hospital is a safe place.
Yeah. Amen. Tweet that. Just don't, you'll get canceled. This is
like
why
that nothing could ever go wrong at a hospital.
It's so funny that like we're like this now because like neither of us were like this at all when we got married. It's so funny. Now I'm just like, oh my God, marry me. But neither of us were like this. So how do you feel like having a third baby is going to affect our slow life with our 2 children?
I feel like it might even slow us down more. I don't know. At least
For
initially.
a while, yeah.
But I mean, they're excited to be a part of it too.
Yeah, I feel like I just don't have. I feel like the nice thing about being pregnant with baby number 3 is like you know what to expect with okay, at first it's a big change. Then it gets easier, and then it gets harder for like a day, and then it gets easier, and it gets easier, and it gets easier. You don't have that perspective when you just have your first baby. And you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then you see yourself in the mirror and you're like, who is that? But then once you've been through it a couple times, you know, it gets better and easier. And things do go, quote unquote, back to normal.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited.
Me too.
Should we go have pizza now?
Yes.
We didn't get to talk about your chick tattoo, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Save that for part 2. If you want to connect with Kyle on the internet, too bad. Okay, thank you all for watching. We will see you in the next episode. Forgot to talk into the microphone.